Hello everyone and welcome to Split Second. This week we are showcasing Strixhaven all new commanders, and to join the class we received another guest and friend, Guilherme, aka Player Not Connected. Leite is on Extus Overlord combo, Bal is on a non-conventional Galazeth Prismari build, Guy brought Zimon Quandrix Prodigy combo, and lastly David is on a spicy build for Cody Vociferous Codex. Let's check those starting hands. Leite mulliganed once and kept a risky one-lander, with the Wooded Foothills. However, Mana Creep can help on casting almost everything in his hand, starting with the Krenko Tin Street Kingpin most likely. Keeper of the Accord can help on getting further lands if he gets behind, and then 3 tutors for different things. Gamble, Entomb and Buried Alive might be enough to help him achieve his game plan. Bal mulliganed once and kept a fast and versatile hand with a Lucky Gemstone Caverns, a basic island and a volcanic one. Jeweled Lotus can summon Galazeth on turn 1 and Gamble can tutor for Thrumming Stone or something else. Pyromantic Ascension has found its place in EDH, as it seems, and Dragon's Approach tells you why. Guy had to mulligan down to 6 and didn't want to risk going lower. With a single Waterlogged Groves he'll be able to recoup due to Birds of Paradise and Bloom Tender as ramp. Screep Ranger is a needed combo piece, while Winds of Rebuke is a versatile removal and Pact of Negation can help him going off. He sent Elvish Mystic to the bottom. Finally, David kept his first hand with a bit of everything: City of Brass, Mana Confluence and Polluted Delta for lands. Ponder is a good cantrip, while Abrupt Decay is great and counterable removal. Underworld Breach is one of the lines of the deck, while Card of Calling is used to get Thassa's Oracle. Ready to go back to school? As we are starting, Bal announces his luck with the Gemstone Caverns exiling an island. Leite starts his turn with the Wooded Foothills, cracking it for a Badlands. He casts Mana Crypt and follows it with the Krenko Tin Street Kingpin, shipping it to Bal. He plays a Volcanic Island, casts Jeweled Lotus and then his commander Galazeth Prismari. It enters, creating a treasure, which he actually cracks to cast Pyromancer Ascension. After the table reads it thoroughly, David figures Bal's Dragon's Approach plans, and we are on Guy's turn. He plays a Waterlogged Grove and casts a Humble Birds of Paradise, passing the turn. David plays a Polluted Delta, cracking it for a Tropical Island. He casts Ponder and passes. Leite loses the Crypt roll and he goes directly to combat. He swings Krenko at David, creating 2 Goblin tokens. Without extra black or red for his Blood avatar, he plays a Plains and casts Keeper of the Accord before passing. With the current board state, Leite can cast Awaken the Blood avatar each turn as long as Krenko keeps attacking and growing, so Bal feels forced to counteract that with a Gamble. He tutors for the Tabernacle at Pendrell Vale, and luckily discards a Dragon's Approach. He plays the Tabernacle before passing, and on his end step, Keeper of the Accord fetches a basic Plains for Leite. Guy takes collateral damage for Leite not to explode on their faces, so Birds of Paradise pays for itself, slowing him deeply. He plays the Gemstone Caverns and casts Bloom Tender before passing. David plays a City of Brass and casts Carpet of Flowers. He follows it with a Mana Crypt and goes to his second main phase, adding 1 purple from Carpet and casts his commander, Cody Vociferous Codex. He passes to Leite, who loses his Crypt roll again. After some pondering, he only pays for Krenko and Keeper to stay. He got the mana source he needed, a luxury suite. He attacks with both creatures at Guy and Krenko triggers getting in 3 goblins. Guy takes 6 and on Leite's second main phase he casts Awaken the Blood avatar, sacrificing his 3 tokens. Bal has a Flusterstorm and tries to probe the table to do something first, but no one seems to have anything, so it resolves, creating a 3/6 avatar that makes each opponent sacrifice a creature. As if that was not enough, he casts a Serra Ascendant before passing. Bal draws and plays a Fiery Islet. He casts a Dragon's Approach, triggering Ascension, getting his first counter. Leite just needs to lose the Crypt roll and the table will be slightly safer. Guy pays for the Tabby trigger and simply passes, failing a land drop. David's Crypt also slaps him and he plays a Mana Confluence. He ponders for a bit, but decides to pass with some interaction up. Leite rolls for the creep and actually loses the roll, so the table rejoices. This makes him change his mind and not pay for Keeper nor Serra. He goes to combat and Guy fires a Winds of Rebuke onto Krenko, so Leite is delayed on his plans to continuously awake avatars. Each person mills 2, notably good interaction and a Nadnausen from David, that makes Leite attack him with his typo negative avatar, triggering and dealing 3 damage at each opponent. On his second main phase he casts Gamble for an Animate Dead. He luckily discards an Entomb and proceeds to cast his Buried Alive, tutoring for a Dockside Extortionist, Simian Spirit Guide and World Guard Dragon. On his end step, David fires an Abrupt Decay on Bal's Ascension, as everyone is increasingly low and fears for extra damage. Bal does alert him for a possible animate dead incoming, but David has plans for that too. Bal draws and simply passes with some interaction as well. Guy pays for Bloom Tender and also passes, unfortunately not finding those land drops. David's Mana Crypt is learning from Lattice and slaps him too. He adds blue from Carpet and plays a Badlands. He casts Windfall as he's out of good options and disrupts Late's ideas as well. In response, Guy fires his Cyclonic Drift on the Avatar to buy the table some time. Everyone discards and draws 4 cards. David then casts a Lotus Petal and ships it to Late. He finally wins the Crypt Roll and plays a Scrubland. He casts an Imperial Seal, tutoring for a Dance of the Dead, insisting on that World Guardian loop. He passes, and on his end step, Bal cracks his Fiery Islet to draw a card and dig for fuel. He starts his turn with a Ponder. He then plays a City of Brass and casts a Grim Monolith before passing. Guy still pays for Bloom Tender and finally gets to play some lands, a Scalding Tarn that he cracks for a Tropical Island. He then casts Zimon Quandrix Prodigy and ships it to David. His script is also forgiving this time around, and he adds 1 brown from Carpet before playing a Tundra and casts his Encyclopedia. After some pondering, he lets Late get to it. Once again, he loses the Crypt Roll. These crypts are the real MVP. He draws and instantly casts Silence. Bal and Guy pass and David hard casts a Force of Negation. With everyone tapped, Late feels this is the window, so he casts a Dance of the Dead targeting World Guardian Dragon. It resolves, so now he's able to generate infinite mana, since World Guardian Dragon ETB trigger will make him exile all his other permanents, Dance of the Dead included, which will trigger itself, making him sacrifice the dragon, returning all his permanents to the field again. In this loop, where his permanents enter and leave the field continuously, he taps the lands in response to the triggers to generate infinite mana. He ends the loop by choosing a different target for Dance of the Dead, and then uses his infinite mana to cast Awaken the Blood Avatar, to generate enough hastened blood cells to kill the table. GG. This was a short match, so we decided to attend the next class. This time, Bal won the die roll. He mulliganed once, and his ramp deterred him to go lower, again with a basic island and a mountainous one for lands. Lion's Eye Diamond is a semi-mox, Grim Monolith can help on getting Galazeth out or a Drumming Stone, and Preordain will help on digging for that. Finally, 2 dragons approach to maybe grind the table a bit. Guy kept a more proactive hand this time around, with a Polluted Delta and a Cephalid Colosseum for lands. Mana Crypt can help on an early time Twister to disrupt his opponent's plans, while Birds of Paradise can also help on getting Quirion Ranger on the table to later try to combo. Quandrix Command is a versatile card in its trial period. David kept his first 7 again with a 1-lander, Scrubland, although Lotus Petal can help him cast Sylvan Library turn 1 and start drawing those needed lands, since his Divining Top is mostly not needed if Library sticks, while Noxus Revival can interact with pesky reanimation loops from later. Muddle the Mixture is a good counter but great tutor as well, and Brain Freeze we all know what it does. Finally, Late mulliganed once and kept a ramped up hand, hoping to draw the good stuff instead of going lower. A Swamp, Plains, City of Brass and Lucky Gemstone Caverns will ramp him to 3 mana on turn 1, alongside that Mox Diamond. Memnite is used in Curio lines and Dance of the Dead in World Guardian lines. Let's see how this one unfolds. Winning the last match was not enough for Late, so he has the luck to start the game with an extra land on the field. He exiles a Plains to his Gemstone Caverns, and Bal starts his turn with a Volcanic Island followed by a Preordain. He ships one and draws the other, and casts a Lion's Eye Diamond before passing. Guy plays a Polluted Delta, cracking it for a Tropical Island, and similar to Game 1, casts Birds of Paradise before shipping it to David. He plays a Scrubland, casts a Lotus Petal that he cracks for green, and casts Sylvan Library. So much knowledge in that deck. Late plays a Swamp, casts a Mox Diamond, discarding a City of Brass, and with all this ramp he casts a Memnite. That's right. He ships it to Bal, that plays an island and casts his Grim Monolith. It's Guy's turn and he plays a Rejuvenating Springs followed by his Mana Crypt. He casts Quirion Ranger and all set fires his Time Twister. Everyone mulligans and he casts a Mox Diamond, discarding a Mana Confluence. He casts Bloom Tender and passes. David draws and it's Muddled Mixture again, so he responds to Library trigger with a Vampiric Tutor, fetching an Isochron Scepter to the top. Library resolves and he pays 4 to draw the extra card. He plays Wooded Foothills and passes. Late plays a Mountain and casts a Mana Vault. He follows it with a Demonic Tutor, to which David responds with his fetch just in case. He gets a Volcanic Island and Late tutors for his sneaky Ad Nauseam, and passes the turn. Bal plays an island and casts an Arcane Signet. He follows it with his Prismari Dragon, getting an extra treasure for the trouble. He ships it to Guy, whose creep took upon the burden to slap him too. He casts a Spellseeker and tutors for a Pact of Negation. Suddenly the eyes shift towards him. He then casts a Shaya, Soul of the Wild, which allows him to generate infinite blue mana, so as everyone else passes, Bal feels forced to respond to it by tapping 2 artifacts for blue and casts Impulse, holding priority and cracking his LED for blue as last resort. He finds no response, and with a Shaya still on the stack, late fires a Pyroblast on Spellseeker, so that Bloom Tender cannot generate 2 mana. However, Guy fires his Pact of Negation. This way, Guy could produce infinite mana returning Quirion Ranger to his hand, since they are a forest due to a Shaya, and untap Bloom Tender that can generate blue and green, with which he recasts Quirion again. However, Xymoon is not a Thrasius and requires tapping to activate, so he simply casts her and finishes the turn by returning Tropical Island with Quirion and tapping Bloom Tender and replaying the Tropical Island. David pays another 4 to keep an extra card from library and plays an Underground Sea. He casts a Chrome Mox, exiling a Dark Confidant. He casts Cody Codex and passes. Late gets to his turn, plays his Skirk Prospector and simply passes. Once again, Bal feels forced to be the one to interact and finds a line that could stop Guy. He casts a Chrome Mox, which resolves, but he doesn't imprint anything. He casts his last card, a Reshape for X = 2, trying to fetch a Spellskite, but Guy responds with a Decisive Denial. And as this leak seems really decisive, Late responds with an Ad Nauseam, which indeed resolves. Finding Red Blast can be enough for Bal to get an answer. He goes all the way to 9 life and finds a silence that might be enough to get him to his turn and win. Reshape is countered and Bal proceeds to attack Late with his dragon. It's still everyone's game as he passes. On Guy's upkeep, he loses the Crypt Roll, pays for the Pact, and then Late casts his silence. It resolves and Guy draws and plays a Polluted Delta. He cracks it for an untapped Breeding Pool and proceeds to attack with all creatures at Late, who simply chumps the big old tree Ashaya, taking 4 and going to 2 life, rendering his Vampiric Tutor uncastable. He passes to David, who pays 4 life to draw an extra card. He plays the Command Tower and ponders for a possible way out from 2 opponents about to win. He is missing some pieces, but starts by activating Cody to generate "What have I got?" The next spell he casts is Reanimate, targeting Late's Memnite, which triggers Cody and he semi-cascades into his only possible spell, Hypergenesis. He casts it, and after some awe from the table, Guy responds by activating Quirion Ranger and tapping Bloom Tender and returning Spellseeker's 3 to his hand. Hypergenesis resolves and David puts Jeskai Ascendancy onto the battlefield. Late puts Grand Abolisher and Guy puts Spellseeker. David decides not to continue this process and Spellseeker's trigger goes to the stack, to which David responds by casting a Brainstorm, triggering Jeskai Ascendancy, pumping and untapping Cody. He decides not to loot and resolves Brainstorm. He then responds by activating Cody for another 5 colors and then casts Abrupt Decay on Grand Abolisher, triggering Cody and Ascension, untapping and looting. He then semi-cascades onto Abundant Harvest. Spellseeker's trigger then resolves and Guy tutors for a Winds of Rebuke, to have his options open and maybe clear David's way towards Late. David then casts Abundant Harvest, choosing non-land, triggering Ascendancy to pump and loot, and then goes on to reveal a Cyclonic Rift, which again only targets non-lands, and since all of Guy's creatures are forests, he casts it on Late's Skirk Prospector, triggering Ascendancy but choosing not to loot. He then goes to combat and throws his hard-covered book at Late, who has no way out. He then passes, and on Bal's turn he draws and casts another Dragon's Approach, actually missing one more to be able to tutor for a Nullspine Dragon. He swings with Galazeth at Guy and passes. On his end step, Guy activates Quirion Ranger to return Spellseeker to his hand again and tapping Bloom Tender. He then activates Xymoon to draw 2 cards. He gets to his turn and the Crypt slaps him one last time, as he plays a Snow Forest and casts Spellseeker. He tutors for a Flusterstorm for added protection, and then casts Eldritch Evolution, sacrificing the Seeker and getting Keenan to the battlefield. This way he is able to tap 1 blue and 2 green with Bloom Tender, uses Quirion to untap Bloom Tender, returning itself as they are a forest due to a Shaya, and then recast it, netting this way 1 blue and 1 green each time. After having infinite Simic mana, he can activate Xymoon to draw his whole deck and then tap her with Quirion as well. He then casts a huge Finale of Devastation and swings for lethal. GG. Thank you for joining us for today's match, everyone. Mardu is slowly getting those wins, and Xymoon actually showed to be a possible budget alternative to Thrasius. We'd like to start the credits by thanking our current patrons, and especially Izanagi, Stefan, TJ Rapp, Mike Purr, Aajimo, Encrustable, Drunken House Cat, V, RJ and Heated Chill, our stack breakers. If you want to support us, you can do so by liking this video, subscribing, or by becoming a patron yourself. If you want to go through other Commander adventures, click one of the videos on the right. If you want to talk with us about our games or other EDH related matters, join us on Discord. Join us again next week for a new set of Commanders and more decisive plays. See you all then!